Oh, that's fine. That's fine. No problem.
Follow the chapel services now.
Well,
The service is going to be beginning in a minute. I want to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. Я прошу всех, пожалуйста, выключить ваши мобильные телефоны. The pain of loss of a loved one is a destructive emotion. And in the Jewish tradition, we know how difficult it is for mourners to express it. People often don't feel comfortable expressing such a negative feelings. But it is very important for mourners to do so. I'll just say that when someone passes, it is painful to talk about him, but it is even more painful not to talk about him. And this is why both in biblical times and today, mourners have performed clear ceremony, tearing their clothing. And this is done to allow the mourners to express their grief and the destructive nature of it. At this moment, I will ask Lev's wife and children to please rise for prayer. Today, I'm given the sad honor to say goodbye together with you to Lev Lieberman. But I want to assure every single one of you that we came here today not because Lev has passed away. We are here because he lived. We are here to commemorate his life and what his life meant for everyone who knew him. Lev was born in 1939 in Kiev. And as you can imagine, when he was a little baby, just about 2 years old, World War II came to the USSR, and they were evacuated to Uzbekistan right away. And there, his father passed away from illness, and his mother was left alone. They came back to Kiev right after the war, and as you can imagine, the life over there was miserable. Nothing was built back up. There was starvation. There was no jobs, no food. And Lev's mother was arrested for stealing a piece of bread from somewhere. She ended up being sent to jail for 3 years. Now, what happens to the child? He's a boy of 7 years old. He cannot fend for himself. Even though Lev had many aunts and uncles, none of them were able to take him in because of starvation in their own families. They didn't know how to feed him. So Lev ended up going to an orphanage for these 3 years. And while in orphanage, there was also no food there. There was literally no food. And the boys from orphanage, the only way how they were able to find some food, they were going to the fields and taking potatoes from there. These were government-owned fields. They were not your fields. You were also not allowed to take anything from there. But that was the only way how the boys were able to find food for themselves. And guess what? Once Lev was caught stealing this potato, and he started being beaten. He started being beaten by the workers who caught him. They brought him back to the orphanage where he was, and they were beating him up there. He saw the principal, the director of the orphanage, and he grabbed onto him because he knew that if he would let go of him and if the director of the orphanage would walk away, these farmers would just kill him. Finally, the principal of the orphanage told these farmers, «Оставьте этого жиденка, ладно? Let this little Jew live. Leave him alone.» And that's the only way how he survived. Only someone who lived in the USSR can appreciate that in those years in that country, the only way to get by was by methods which seem to be unfathomable today here. Then his mother was let out from jail. She was released from jail, and they were living together in a communal apartment, which means that they had only one room. It was right near the only shul, the only synagogue in Kiev, in an area called Podol. Right after the school, Lev started working at a shoe factory, and then afterwards he became a painter. He was painting for living, and like it usually happens in the USSR, first you have your main job where you are painting whatever they are giving you from the building department to paint, and then after that you have some other work which you do on the side, and then afterward you have some other job which you do on the side. In order to make ends meet, Lev very often had to have 3 jobs at a time. And in spite of this very difficult living conditions, and in spite of the fact that he had to work so hard, for Lev, the main thing throughout his life was his family. He was a family person. He was a family man. And Edik remembers how when he was little, he would pick him up, give him ice cream, take him to different amusement parks, and then bring him to his mother's, to Edik's grandmother's house. And when Ella was born, for a while she was having health issues, and doctors said that she needs more sun and more swimming. So Lev and Sofa didn't have so much money. They weren't wealthy people, but they knew it has to be done for their daughter, and they were saving up every penny to be able to take Ella to the areas where she would need what she needed for her health. And then he obviously was teaching his kids how to swim, how to ride a bicycle, how to skate. And Slavik Shlomo is saying how he remembers he was waking up very early, in the middle of the night. It was still dark, about 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And he sees his father, Lev, fully dressed and about to leave the house, and he's asking him, "Where are you going?" So he says, "I'm going to store to stand in line for milk. Shlomo asked him, but stores don't open up till much later, the earliest 6 a.m. Why are you leaving now? It's 3. Lev said, if I'll get there when stores open up, the line is going to be already so long that I will have very little chance of getting this milk. So he would wake up very early to go to a store to get milk, to buy everything they needed, then bring it back, and then go to work. And even though Lev didn't have formal education, as you know, in the Western world today, everybody speaks about college, college, college. Everybody needs to get degrees, then again degrees. We noticed in our lives that very often people without any degrees end up being far ahead of people who do have degrees and much smarter and much more well-rounded and well-read than people with degrees. And Lev was exactly that. Even though Lev didn't have any formal degrees, he was a very educated person. He loved reading. In their house, they didn't have a wall that would not have a bookcase leaning against it. And these bookcases were from the floor to the ceiling. And they had over there books on every topic. And he would read. He would read everything that he would find. Not only did he like reading history and information about the world, the countries, politics, he also loved poetry. Many people don't even know that he was writing his own poetry as well. And not only that, he was also making sure that his children would be educated. And he would tell them everything what he read on their level. And imagine the USSR in the 80s, where so little information was available about what's going on in the world, and the radio and TV are talking all the terrible things about Israel, Israeli aggressors who are bothering their innocent neighbors. And Lev was telling his kids, no. He was telling them the whole history of the Jewish nation. He was telling them about the establishment of the State of Israel. He was telling them about the 6-Day War and about the War of Yom Kippur, and about how bravely Jewish soldiers were defending their country. And his entire family appreciated him not only for valuable lessons that he was giving them, but also for his sense of humor, as they told me, a little corny sense of humor, or maybe a lot corny sense of humor, and his desire to help people. He loved helping people. He loved being of assistance to whoever he saw. And he was great with his hands. He was able to build things, fix things, and in the USSR, he was helping in the school where his kids were learning, fixing things over there. And he would volunteer for that without getting paid. And other friends, that whoever was able to just ask him, he would never say no. He would always run to help. And then in 1992, Lev with Sofa, with Ella, and Shlomo came to the US. Edik was already here. He was the one who brought them. And he was working here until 2011. He was working here for all these years on what they call the Russian factory here, PowerCon. And he was working there in the paint shop, on their assembly line. And even here, he continued his education. He continued reading and studying. he wanted to know English, he would always walk around with a dictionary and with his little notebook. And whenever he would find a word he didn't know, he would have to know what this word is. He would write it down. And he was always making sure to learn the language. And he would insist on reading books in English. And he was not only reading about history like he always did, and not only about the world's politics, and not only poetry. Here he was also reading a lot about natural remedies and about healthy lifestyle. He was very concerned, making sure that his family would have the right advice for every ailment that he knew anything about, and he himself was following those protocols that he was able to learn about. And that's what kept him, thank God, going. That's what kept him healthy. Today, entire family of Lev, Sofa, Ella, Edward, Shlomo, Eleanor, Judith, Hannah, Avi, and Benny. Everyone who knows Lev and who remembers him appreciates his kindness, his wisdom, and his impact, the impact that he had on their lives. We are today speaking about Lev because we want to remember everything about him, but also because Lev himself is remembering everything about his life. And also because God himself is remembering everything what Lev has done throughout all the years here. And God is allowing his soul to rise up on high in merit of every mitzvah that Lev has performed. Sometimes people think that in order to do mitzvot, to fulfill the Torah commandments, one needs to be an Orthodox observant Jew. It is not true. Every one of us performs a lot of mitzvot. And a person like Lev has definitely done many, many mitzvot, fulfilled many Torah commandments. And we are asking God to please remember every single one of them today and allow his soul to rise up on high in merit of every single one of them. Mizmor LeDavid Adonai lo yachsor bina izde sheyarbitzeini meimnuchas in haleini nafshi yeshev v'yancheini magle tzedek leman shmo hoi gam ki yelech begeit tzalmo v'yisloiro ki ato imodi shivtocho mishantecho hei moinachamuni tarech lefone shulchan neged tzerero hoi deshanto v'Hashem roi shikoi shirivayoho ach toi v'chesed yerdefuni kol yimei chayoi v'shavti beveis Adonai le'erech yomim. Today is a difficult day, not only for Lev's family, but also for him himself, for Lev. And this is because he does not want to say goodbye to his family, to his loved ones. He doesn't want to say goodbye to this world because he knows how much good he would be able to bring to this world if he would be given an opportunity to stay here for longer. We are reading the Psalm of David, where we hear about God holding person's hand throughout his entire life in this world, helping person's soul when it goes up to heaven, and also is helping the person's soul during the transition from this world to the next. Shilamalis Esa na el hauri me and Yavoy Ezri mi Masha mi Madinois say Shamayim Orets. Al Yitain Lametragle Havilanum Shemrecha, Hine Loin Evolution, Shamer Israel. I know Shemrecha Netzul, Holiadimenecho, Yema Mashemeshloike, Kovayare, Yachba Loilo. I know Shmercha Mikolro, I know Shmeres Nafshecha. I know Shmer, Tseis Chovayecha, Miata, Vead, Oilom. In Ukraine, there was a small town called Mezrich. It wasn't Kiev, it wasn't even Odessa. It was a small Jewish village, a shtetl, in western Ukraine, not far away from Lvov, Lemberg. And in this town of Mezrich lived a famous rabbi whose name was Dov Ber, and he was known all over the world as the Mezricher Maggid. Maggid in Hebrew means preacher, the preacher of Mezrich. And Jews from all over the world would come to Mezrich to learn with the rabbi, to seek his advice, to get his blessings. And once a wealthy businessman from Lemberg, Germany, came to Mezrich to see the rabbi. Now, you probably understand that coming from Lemberg, which was the center of civilization and the center of economy of those days, to this small shtetl was a big cultural shock for this businessman. He couldn't believe how people lived over there. Life's conditions were miserable. And when he walked into the rabbi's house, his surprise grew even bigger. He couldn't hold himself back. He asked the rabbi, "Rabbi, why are you living in such a poverty? You don't even have normal furniture in your house. You have tree stumps instead of chairs and just a board, a piece of wood instead of a table. Why are you living in such a poverty?" The rabbi seemed to be surprised with this question. The rabbi says, because I don't have nice furniture, that's why you think I'm poor? One second, asked the rabbi. Could you please tell me, do you consider yourself a poor person or a wealthy person? The businessman was taken aback a little bit. He says, well, they consider me one of the richest people in my city of Lemberg. Says the rabbi, if that's the case, then where's your furniture? How come I don't see it? Here, the businessman became completely surprised. He says, Rabbi, let me just explain to you how these things work. At home, I have beautiful furniture. But when people travel somewhere, they don't take their furniture with them in the carriage. If you'll come to my house, I'll show you beautiful furniture. But now I'm just on my way. I'm traveling. I'm on my journey. That's why I don't see my furniture. The rabbi replied, after a long pause, he said, so you are right. But please understand, I am now also only traveling. I'm on my journey. But at home, back home, I have beautiful furniture. Today, Lev is continuing his journey. Today, he's returning back home. And you know what? Throughout his life, he maybe didn't have the most beautiful furniture. You just heard about his life's story. There was no hope of having a nice furniture, especially by modern American standards, for the most of his life. When he was in the USSR and he came here, he was ready later in his years. He didn't have beautiful furniture here, but you know what? It was only a journey. He's returning back home now, and over there, he is going to see his beautiful furniture. Today, he's going to see his wealth. Today, he's going to realize that he is a very rich person. He's going to see all of the riches that he has earned during his life here. Every mitzvah that he has performed, every good deed that he did, every time he helped someone, or every time he did a Jewish ritual. This was the act through which he was earning his wealth, his richness. And I can promise you that today he sees all of this and he feels himself as a very wealthy man. At this moment, I would want to ask Eleanor Lieberman, please, to share a few words with us.
Oh man, when I found out that Lev died, it really hit me really hard, and not just for myself as a daughter-in-law, but it hit me for my husband who had to lose his father, because 4 years back I had lost my father and I knew what that was like, and I just really feel for the family. I love my mother-in-law, I love my brother-in-law, I love my sister-in-laws. I just love the entire family, and it's been really hard. But I want to say something more positive about Lev and about what it means for things meant to be. When Lev passed away, it was meant to be, because had it taken any longer for him to pass, it wouldn't. Things are always meant to happen, and that's my belief, and I believe it every day. And like my faith with God gets stronger, even when things are hard, like when someone passes away or we get injured or sick. I highly believe that in what is fate and what is meant to be because of God. And I want to tell you something a little bit about Lev that I've grown to as I've known him, even prior to him getting sick. Now, even though Lev wasn't very religious, it was so important for him and his family to be connected to the Jewish community. Over the years, I've known people that actually went to a conservative shul with Lev for many years, and they've told me so many good things, that he would come with his books, because like Rabbi Belinsky said, he was a very learned man, despite his shortcomings and all the tragedies he had to go through in life, but he just kept on fighting. And even when he was sick, close to a year, maybe 8 months to a year prior, we had visited Sofa and Lev for lunch, like we always do on the weekends. And it was a Jewish holiday, and we decided to break bread, do the prayers, bring some food, and eat with our family. Even in his most bedridden state and how he was not able to talk, when we concluded the prayer, he said, "Amen." And that's when I believed, even when you're in such a state, like the only thing you have left in your last moments of life is God. And and I think that's why, like, I'm continuing on with my growth too with religion on a more personal note. When it comes to Lev, the reason why me and Stan are married is probably because of Lev and the family, and how much of a great person Lev was. I was set to leave to Israel to visit family after I graduated from college. And before I left, Lev grabbed Stan by the neck and told him, "You have to propose to Eleanor before she leaves to Israel. Otherwise, you can say goodbye to that relationship." So Stan was very nervous, and he asked me to marry me. He asked me for my hand in marriage, and we got married a year after. And and I think the reason why he had pushed Stan to make that decision is because in life we all make mistakes, and like I said, when things are meant to be, like the term Besher, it's like meant to be together. It's true love. I think that's why he pushed him to ask my hand in marriage, because prior to that, years ago, him and Sofa had met at a wedding. They were introduced from a close friend of Lev's and an aunt that introduced them at a wedding. Now, the interesting part was they had dated for 6 months, and then things just didn't work out. Lev wasn't ready. Maybe he was nervous about continuing the relationship, so they cut ties for a little bit. Now, Sofa soon got married to somebody else for a short period of time, and then after the marriage didn't work out, she went back to college. That's the one thing I love about my in-laws, that they just continued on learning despite anything. She went to college, and Lev had asked for her. He asked about her. He wanted to know where she was. I guess, just because the relationship ended, he really wanted to get back together with her. I think he had made that mistake, and I think that's why he didn't want Stan making the same mistake, to let go of true love and a good relationship. So he waited for her as she got off the train station or the metro station from college, and from then on, 3 months later, they got married. And that just true love story just showed me how much of a caring person Lev was, and how much of a loving husband he was. The amount of devotion he had to Sofa will always stick to me, and just what great parents they are. And I'm just really saddened that Lev is gone, but I know his memory will live on through his sons, his daughters, and his grandchildren, and that's all I really had to say.
Thank you, Lenore. Really appreciate it. Now, I want to ask Judith Bieberman, please, to say a few words also.
I'm sure you're so clumsy. Thank you, Rabbi. Hi, I'm Judith Bieberman. I've known the family since 23 years ago. They have been here a few years, maybe about 8 or 9. The interesting thing is I met Ella at DuPont Circle in Washington, and we started talking, and I realized she lived up in Baltimore, where so many of my family lived for so many years, for generations, really, some of them. And I asked her where, and she mentioned, okay, Reisterstown. And I said, well, where in Reisterstown? She started looking at me like I was suspicious. I said, oh, yeah, I know those apartments. Anyway, she took me eventually to meet her family. I didn't meet Slavic at that time. And I met Lev and Sofa and Babushka, Sofa's mom, and spent some time sitting around. And he said, well, Babushka, really doesn't talk to anybody, but do you want to meet her? I said, yes. They opened the door, and there she was, beautiful blue eyes she had, and she motioned for me to sit down with her. The next thing you know, we're singing Hava Nagila, and they're all peeking in the door, So as we're singing, so I felt accepted, and then Lev took me aside and said, I make $4.10 an hour, and when my birthday came around, I'm supposed to get a raise. So my boss said, oh, happy birthday, pat on the back. happy birthday. And Lev said to him, happy birthday, pat on the back, where's my raise? He wanted his raise. So I thought that was funny. And then he proceeded to show me something from Beth Yaakov for Baba Yar Memoriam, and he got me to write out a $150 check. So he was happy with that. I handed it to him, and when he had a stent some many years ago, I helped with advice a little bit, and afterwards he bought me a matryoshka to keep nesting dolls. I'm sure most of you know that. So, and many years after that, he's given me good advice. He's been there when there's been family crises, and Sofa has been beside him every step of the way. I want to thank especially my brother-in-law, Stanley, for always believing in me. And, of course, my partner, Ella, and our two beautiful children, Avi and Benny, whom I love very much. And I hope we continue to keep in mind the many things that Lev taught us and taught me and scolded me at times, but that's all right, I deserved it. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith. When a person is departing from this world, it is very difficult for him. And this is because he knows how much more good he would be able to do here in this world had he be given a chance to stay here. And in order to do good in this world, in order to bring godliness into the world, in order to do mitzvot, perform Torah commandments, a person's soul has to be in his body. If we are alive, that means our soul is in the body. Everybody has two parts, a soul and a body. A body is physical. Like everything physical, it has a beginning and an end. It is born and it dies. A soul is eternal. The soul lives forever. Lev's soul is going to be living forever, but unfortunately, it's not going to be living here in this material world anymore. It's going to be living in the higher worlds. It is difficult for it, though, because it realizes that it will not be able to do mitzvot, to perform Torah commandments in this world anymore, because in order to do that, it needs a body. But it doesn't mean that we cannot help it. Every time when someone from Lev's family is going to be performing a mitzvah in his memory, this is when Lev's soul will be able to still live in this world. It will not be living in this world with its own body, because it won't have its own body anymore, but it will be living in this world in bodies of those who are going to be doing these mitzvot. Every time when someone from Lev's family is doing a mitzvah, performing a Torah commandment, this is, and if it's done in Lev's memory, Lev's soul is going to be expressed through this action. This is why in the Jewish tradition it is customary to perform mitzvot in person's memory. This way we are continuing person's life in this world. At this moment, we're going to recite Adon Olamim prayer, where we are going to be assuring Lev that his family is going to be performing mitzvot in his memory. This is the greatest consolation that we can offer to him. Lev's Hebrew name is Label, and his father's name is Elia. His mother was Sarah Brina, and in the prayer, he's going to be mentioned as Label ben Elia or Sarah Brina. I want to ask everyone to please rise. Adonai Elomim, Schoires Nishmas, Label Ben Elia, Usora Braina Shohalach, Leila Moho, Bavur, Shukul Mishpachte, Isim Mitzvah, Laskoras Neshamoso. O no varachim vaslichos, ti nafsha tzur betrachaim, v'ti menuchos koved, v'neimar omein. Amen. You may be seated. At this moment, the funeral procession is going to be following to Har Sinai Cemetery, known as Mills on Garrison Forest Road. Those who are going to be driving in your own cars, we are asking you to please turn bright lights and flashers. I'm going to announce now the names of the pallbearers. Those whose names are called, please get up and go to the rear of the chapel, and then afterwards the casket with Lev's body is going to be taken out, and the family is going to follow behind, and we're going to be following behind them. Yaakov Shlomo Trofimov, Avi Lieberman, Benny Lieberman, David Trachtman. Would everyone please rise?